Welcome back, budgeteers. Coach Nino Villa here, disciple of Christ, husband, father, and financial coach. And today on the New Money Habits podcast, I want to take you on a little bit of a journey. Are you behind on your bills? Are you living paycheck to paycheck? Are you drowning in debt? Or are you simply stuck? No matter what your starting point is, today's episode is for you. Hey there, budgeteers. The new year is here, and you know what that means. It's time for fresh starts and new habits. If one of your goals is to get better with your money, New Money Habits has exactly what you need to kick things off right: the Payday Power Planner. This isn't just any budget tool. The Payday Power Planner is designed to work with your pay periods, not just the calendar month. Why does that matter? Because it helps you to see exactly when your money is coming in and going out. No surprises, no guesswork. With the Payday Power Planner, you'll know if you're working with a surplus or facing a deficit, so you can make informed decisions about your money. It's not just a plan, it's the clarity and control you've been looking for to start the new year strong. Make this the year you finally build new habits for financial freedom. Grab your free Payday Power Planner from New Money Habits today and take the first step toward a better financial future. Visit newmoneyhabits.com now, because this year it's time for a better plan for your money. So no matter what your starting point is, whether you're behind on bills, living paycheck to paycheck, you're drowning in debt, or you just feel stuck, today's episode is going to be for you, because we're going to show you, I'm going to share client testimonials about people who, just like you, started in those positions, and share with you what they were able to achieve when they got serious about managing their money well. And please don't hear any unintended judgment there. When I say they finally got serious about managing their money well, it just means they kind of got sick and tired of being sick and tired. And if you've been hanging around the podcast any length of time, you may have heard me say things like financial literacy is just not taught. For most of us, for the vast majority of us, we learn nothing in the way of personal finances back in high school or in college. Maybe you took an economics course, maybe it had a segment on personal finance, but it was probably either very inadequate or ill-timed. For instance, I was in 10th grade when I did my economics course, that my project was go out and buy a car. Well, it was so ill-timed because, one, I wasn't buying a $25,000 vehicle at the age of 16 or 17. And so there was very little relatability. And then for many of us, our parents don't teach us anything about personal finance either. And so when I say that these people got serious about managing their money well, it's just that they got sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they started to look for any information on how they could manage their money better. And if you're listening to this podcast, that's you. So let's start at the beginning. What if you're behind on your bills? This is very common. I've sat down with so many clients in which that's their starting point. Their starting point in sitting down with a financial coach is, I don't know how I'm going to afford financial coaching because I'm behind on my bills. And, for each and every one, that first initial consultation is free and it is eye-opening. And so when I sit down with a client who's behind on their bills, there are a couple of themes, a couple of reoccurring commonalities between them. For those who are behind on their bills, and this was me once in my early 20s, I'd get behind on my bills. It's because I lacked intentionality. I didn't have a plan, and I certainly wasn't prioritizing. Well, I find that that same thing is true for the clients that I sit down with. When they're behind on their bills, it's because there isn't a plan in place and there isn't a knowledge around how to prioritize their expenses. And so 9 times out of 10, when I sit down with a client like this and we put everything down on paper and everything has a purpose and we make a plan, 9 times out of 10, we find out that they make more money than they consciously spend. Now, I qualified spend with consciously. They make more than they spend would not be true, because they're often spending more, and this is how they got behind on their bills. But it's because they're spending unconsciously or subconsciously. There's not an awareness around, what am I spending on? Where's that money going? Because there isn't a plan and there isn't a whole lot of tracking going on. So once we sit down and we put it all down on paper, we actually find out, more often than not, 9 times out of 10, that the person actually makes more money than their required expenses. That's another way of putting it, right? That if we put down, what are your required expenses? What does it take to put food on the table? What does it take to keep a roof over your head? What does it take to keep the lights on and the water running? What does it take to get you to and from work or school? When we take a look at those expenses, and as we're taking a look at those, something like food on the table, when I'm sitting down with a client and we're talking about that category, it might be the first time they're actually thinking about what boundaries need to be in place. How often are they going to the grocery store? How much do they spend when they go? How often are they eating out? What is that costing them? So we have this conversation and we come up with a number. But because we're making a plan and we're coming up with a number, and that number needs to be realistic and it needs to be reasonable. Realistic in that it actually represents what it costs to feed yourself or your family. But reasonable in that if you make $1,000 a month, you can't spend $800 on food and expect to be able to pay your other bills. So it needs to be realistic and it needs to be reasonable. But as we go through this process, 9 out of 10 times, we find that people are actually making more than their required expenses. And so, since they are making more than their required expenses, there's no reason for them to be behind on their bills. The way they got behind on their bills is they simply stopped tracking. They simply stopped having any intentionality around, when I get this money, I'm going to pay these bills. And it becomes more like, when I get this money, I'm going to do what I want, whether that is eat out, take a trip somewhere, whatever might be getting in the way of them paying their bills. But they already feel like they're behind the 8 ball. So why am I going to stop enjoying life just so I can pay these bills? And so we'll talk through that, and we'll just say, with a plan, you can still do these other things, but there needs to be a method and a priority to some of these things. So as they come to us, many of them find themselves behind on their bills. So when working with us, what is their result? Well, their result is, not only do they get caught up on their bills, but it usually doesn't take any longer than 8 weeks. The average is usually 6. In 6 weeks' time, with a plan and with a little bit of discipline, we can get clients caught up. I remember sitting down with a young lady who was behind on her phone, car, and a couple of credit cards. And when we sat down and figured out, okay, you actually make more than your expenses, which is a good thing. It means you have a surplus to work with. We can get you caught up. We can get you caught up on your car payment, your phone payments, and your credit cards. And we were able to do that within 6 weeks. So since I meet with clients on or around payday, and this particular client was paid bi-weekly, it's by the third meeting that we have already made a plan to get her caught up. And so 3 paychecks, 6 weeks gets her caught up. And that's pretty common. Like I said, it doesn't take longer than 8 weeks. So 2 months. In 2 months' time, we can get you completely caught up on your past due bills while you're still managing and maintaining everything else. A lot of times we think the situation is much worse than it actually is. And that is 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10, I sit down with clients and they think that their situation is really bad. And when we get it down on paper, whether it's still bad or not that bad at all, it's never as bad as they had it drummed up in their head. It's always worse in their head than it is on paper. And that's one of the reasons why I think a lot of them avoid making a plan in the first place, is they have made the situation so bad in their head that they don't actually want to look at it until they get to the point when they're sitting down with me, and not that they necessarily want to look at it, but that's when they're finally like, you know what? I'm no longer going to avoid this. I'm going to engage. And by engaging, they see, man, this situation is not nearly as bad as I thought it was. It's still not great. It's still not what I want, but it's not as bad as I thought it was. And so now that gives hope, and that gives a reason to continue to take another step forward. You took the first step, you sat down with a financial coach and you looked at it. Now take the next step, and let's start implementing some of the things we discussed so that you can reallocate funds to make sure that you get caught up on bills, and then you start to get ahead.
Hey there, budgeteers. You know, good news can only be good news if there's bad news. So, what's the bad news? The bad news is you and I have a deadly disease called sin, and this disease causes us to rebel and disobey God. See, God is holy, righteous, and just, and He cannot be in the presence of sin. So this horrible disease of ours separates us from the God who created us. And the bad news gets worse. There isn't anything you or I can do to make ourselves right with God. We are dead in our sins and on our way to an eternity separated from God. But that's not God's will for us. See, for God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him should not perish but have everlasting life. God did what only God could do. He made a way for us to be reconciled to Him through Jesus Christ. Jesus came into the world to save sinners like you and me. While we were still sinners, storing up God's anger against us for our rebellion and disobedience, Christ died for us. Jesus took the punishment that you and I deserve and have earned. Jesus is the substitute for your punishment and mine. Now, isn't that some good news? The word gospel means good news. The gospel of Jesus Christ is that you and I broke God's law, and Jesus paid the fine. When we place our faith and trust in Jesus, we get to experience God's grace and mercy. Our gratitude should turn us from our rebellious and disobedient sin toward God, seeking after Him and His righteousness. When we do, God gives us a new heart and a new mind. Praise God for His goodness, and remember, God loves, humans sin, Jesus saves.
But maybe that's not your starting point. Maybe your starting point is not that you're behind on your bills, but you're living more paycheck to paycheck. You know that you make enough money, you're paying all of your bills, but there's nothing left. And you're wondering, where did it all go? Where is my money going? And I sit down with clients that are all over the income spectrum in this stage. I can sit down with somebody who's making $40,000 or $50,000 a year total household income, and they're living paycheck to paycheck. But I also sit down with couples who make $250,000 a year combined, and they're living paycheck to paycheck, and they're wondering, where is it all going? And so income doesn't necessarily dictate whether or not you're living paycheck to paycheck. Behavior and discipline dictate whether or not you're living paycheck to paycheck. And this is the majority of my clients. Most of my clients are here regardless of their income. They are paying all of their bills, but they don't have anything in the way of savings. They are carrying debt, and maybe that debt is growing. One of the ways that they pay their bills is that their debt is actually growing. So maybe they have subscriptions on a credit card and they're making the minimum credit card payment, but they're watching that balance increase every month. And so they're paying everything. Everything is getting paid, but no savings to speak of, and more often than not, growing debt. So what's the problem? Where are they when they come to us? Well, there's no margin in their life. There's no buffer. Every single dollar that's coming in is getting spent. And this is an indication that they too, like people who are behind on their bills, lack having a plan, lack having intentionality, and lack prioritization. And so, just like I said earlier, it's not that they know any better either. What financial literacy have they learned? They're learning by experience. And now they've gotten to a place where they want to sit down with a financial coach because their experience has led them to a place where they're like, hold on, wait a second. This isn't where I want to be. Things are a little too tight. Think about making $250,000 a year household income and things still being tight. Now, in certain parts of the country, that might be very common. In California or in New York City, these things might be very common. But I mean, for the average American, $250,000 is a strong income. And when it's not enough, you got to throw your hands up and say, how did I get here? How did I get to a place where $250,000 a year is just not enough? Now, in part, we can blame that on the economy and the government and other things, but we are going to control what we can control. And what we can control is how we manage $250,000. So, what are some of the results that these types of clients can get with us and in what time period? Well, when I sit down with clients who are like in this situation, we focus on let's get some parked into savings and let's build a little bit of buffer between you and life. It's all about looking at income versus expenses. They know they're making more than they're spending, again, on like essentials and necessities. They're overspending because maybe they have credit and they can do that, and their desire to delay gratification is way, way down. So they kind of want everything the moment they want it. And so we look at income, we look at expenses, those necessities and those essentials. We find that in some cases, I have clients who have like a $3,000 surplus every single month. Let that sink in for a moment. Every month, you have an extra $3,000. And so, what type of overspending are you doing in that all disappears? It all just kind of goes somewhere, and you're not really sure where did we spend that money. So when we find that they have a surplus of that size, or any surplus for that matter, it's now about reprioritizing, shifting priorities, making a plan for how are we going to manage that surplus to build up savings and to eliminate debt. And for people who are living paycheck to paycheck, depending on how much debt they're carrying, they might pay off debt incredibly fast. They may build up savings incredibly fast. It kind of depends on where they are. Just because somebody's living paycheck to paycheck doesn't mean that they're carrying a lot of debt. And so in those cases, we can get a fully funded peace of mind fund in place. But even if we can't get a fully funded peace of mind fund, we get a starter peace of mind fund. And the rule that we have is 25% of your monthly income should be just kind of parked away for a rainy day in your peace of mind fund. So if you're making $10,000 a month, you should have $2,500 socked away just as a buffer between you and life, and then come back and fully fund your peace of mind fund. But if somebody's carrying a little bit of debt, we can eliminate that quickly. We can do a lot with somebody who's living paycheck to paycheck, and we find that buffer, we find that surplus, and we just manage it differently. We manage it better. Right? It was being mismanaged. Now we're managing it well, and we are saving $2,500 in the first call. Right? In the first call, let's look at your income and expenses. Okay, you have this surplus of $3,000. You make $10,000 a month. Let's put $2,500 away right now. Let's just put it away. Let's not touch it. Your starter peace of mind fund is fully funded. So these things happen very, very quickly. Hey there, budgeteers. It's a brand new year, and that means it's time for new habits, starting with your money. Take charge of your finances in 2025 with New Money Habits Financial Coaching. This isn't your typical financial advice. New Money Habits is all about giving you the knowledge, tools, and support to make confident money moves and build a rock solid financial foundation. Here's the deal: we're offering a free discovery session to kick off your journey to financial freedom. That's right, no strings attached. In this session, one of our expert coaches will help you to identify your financial goals and create a better plan for your money. We'll help you master your money mindset, sharpen your money management skills, and keep you accountable every step of the way. Make 2025 the year you say goodbye to financial stress and hello to the freedom you've been dreaming about. Schedule your free discovery session today and start creating the new money habits you need to achieve financial freedom. Whether you're living paycheck to paycheck or behind on bills, you might also just be drowning in debt. And so drowning in debt, I think, is more of a ratio than it is a number. For somebody, being $10,000 or $20,000 in debt would be a lot to them. I think about some of my clients who are fresh out of college. They're working their first corporate job. Maybe they're making $50,000 to $70,000 a year, and the $20,000 or $30,000 student loan that they have feels like it's insurmountable. It feels so big to them. And then I work with clients who their student loans are hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so the number 20 or 30,000, 200,000 has less to do with the number and more to do with the ratio. If you're making $50,000 a year and your student loan is $50,000, that ratio is the same as somebody who's making $200,000 a year, but their student loan is $200,000 a year. And in both of those cases, it's going to feel like a lot. But if you're making $200,000 a year and you have a $50,000 student loan, that doesn't feel so big anymore. Right? And you're going to be able to attack it and tackle it much, much quicker with such a large income and such a small debt. And so drowning in debt is more about a ratio. So what's that ratio look like? And so to determine whether or not you're drowning in debt, I would take a look at a ratio of 3-1. If your debt is 3 times larger than your annual income, you're drowning in debt. So I'll give you some numbers. If you make $40,000 a year, but you have $120,000 worth of debt or more, you are drowning in debt. And that is non-mortgage. So all debt minus your mortgage. Your mortgage could be contributing to the idea of you're drowning in debt, but I want to focus. When I say drowning in debt, I'm talking about non-mortgage debt. When you have a car payment and you have credit cards that you're paying on every month, and that you're also accruing interest on, and so maybe you're paying the minimums or whatever that might be. If you take your annual salary, your annual household income, you multiply it by 3, and if your debt is there or greater, then I would consider you drowning in debt. Go back to the student loan scenario for a moment. For somebody who comes out of school and their first job is, let's say it even pays $70,000, which is not horrible money for somebody in their mid-20s to be making, $70,000 a year. If their student loan debt is 3 times that, they are drowning in debt. Now, if their student loan is about the same, say about $70,000, well, when you think about what is the monthly payment on that $70,000 in comparison to what you're bringing home monthly, now it's very reasonable because, of course, you have a 10-year runway to pay that loan off. So 1-to-1, not bad. But 3 to 1, you're drowning in debt. And 2 to 1, you're already like just in an uncomfortable position. So we crunch the numbers, we find out, okay, you're drowning in debt. Well, almost every single client I sit down with, one, isn't actually at this 3 to 1 ratio, which is good news. It means they're not actually drowning in debt. It's less than 3 to 1. It's 2 to 1. Maybe it's even 1 to 1. I sat down with a client recently who really believed that his only option was bankruptcy. And I was able to help him to figure out, like, no, actually, there is a pathway forward here for you to be completely out of debt within the next 6 months, maybe 9. 6 to 9 months, you are completely out of debt. And he just couldn't see that path because he didn't have a plan. So he wasn't looking at the real numbers. And his income situation had changed very, very recently, where before the income change, he probably was closer to like a 3 to 1 ratio and felt like he was drowning in debt. But then his income significantly shifted, and now it was like, that's like a 1 to 1 ratio. It's actually not nearly as bad as it was. So that increase in income was a tremendous blessing, and he would have been right to think that, or at least feel like he was drowning in debt prior to that. But just because you feel like you're drowning in debt doesn't mean bankruptcy is the ultimate answer. But too often, when I sit down with clients and we start crunching the numbers, that's what they think. They think, well, the only way out of this is bankruptcy. It's like, no, a little bit of planning, a little bit of discipline, and a little bit of good money management, and you're actually going to find a pathway out of this debt that's, for the most part, 2 years or less. It's very rare that it goes beyond 2 years. 2 years or less, a clear path forward, you're out of debt. So that could be 24 months, that could be 18 months, it could be 12 months. And in some cases, it could be 6 to 9 months. So even for people who feel like they're drowning in debt or may truly be drowning in debt based off of that 3 to 1 ratio, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 18 months, no more than 24 months, 2 years, clear path forward will get you out of debt, because we're just going to manage that money well. We're going to manage that income that you have. We're going to look at expenses. We're going to manage it well. We're going to get you out of debt. Hey there, budgeteers. It's a brand new year, and that means it's time for new habits, starting with your money. Take charge of your finances in 2025 with New Money Habits Financial Coaching. This isn't your typical financial advice. New Money Habits is all about giving you the knowledge, tools, and support to make confident money moves and build a rock-solid financial foundation. Here's the deal. We're offering a free discovery session to kick off your journey to financial freedom. That's right, no strings attached. In this session, one of our expert coaches will help you to identify your financial goals and create a better plan for your money. We'll help you master your money mindset, sharpen your money management skills, and keep you accountable every step of the way. Make 2025 the year you say goodbye to financial stress and hello to the freedom you've been dreaming about. Schedule your free discovery session today and start creating the new money habits you need to achieve financial freedom. All right. Last but certainly not least, maybe you just feel kind of stuck. Maybe you are like some clients that I sit down with who actually don't have any debt. They don't have any consumer debt. And in some cases, they don't even have a mortgage anymore. So they have no debt, no car payment, no credit cards, no student loans, none of it. And in some cases, not even a mortgage. And maybe you also have a significant amount of savings. Maybe you have $20,000 sitting in your peace of mind fund. But that's kind of it. And so if maybe you just feel stuck. I sat down with a client years ago. Her and her husband, very strong income earners, had $20,000 set aside in their peace of mind fund, but just kind of felt like, what are we doing? Why don't we feel like we're making any real progress. And so oftentimes this is just it's an exercise in looking at how can you start to save and invest in a way that you go from having a single stream of income that is very active, meaning you have to work for that. You have a 9 to 5 job, you run a small business, whatever that is, but you are actively working to make money, and you have this single stream of income. And how can you turn that into multiple streams of income? And in hopes that some of those additional streams of income have some level of passivity to them, that they're passive income to a certain degree. There is no such thing as 100% passive income. Everything takes a little bit of time and attention, at least time and attention. Even if you're invested in the market, logging on every once in a while to kind of watch performance and see if you need to make any adjustments is time and attention. If you own a piece of rental property, for the most part, that is passive income 90% of the time, right up until something goes wrong with the property, something needs to be repaired or replaced, and now all of a sudden you have to spend time and attention on that stream of income. But for those who are just feeling kind of stuck, it is an opportunity to sit down, look at what you got going on, income versus expenses. What is the margin that you're working with? What is that surplus? And how can we invest that surplus in ways that are actually going to turn into additional streams of income? I know so many people, whether they're clients or just kind of acquaintances, friends, and whatnot, who are retired, but they still want to work. And so their definition of retirement is that they hit a certain age, or they worked for the federal government or state government or city government, and they have served the number of years of service that they needed to before they could retire. Well, here at New Money Habits, we define retirement as working because you want to, not because you have to. And so for the people that I know that are in retirement, that's largely true. They're working because they want to, not because they have to. And so they've found a second stream of income, either through another job, or I know this one couple who love to Instacart together. So they'll go and do grocery shopping for other people and take it and deliver. And they do that together. And it's a way for them to spend some time doing something productive and get to spend that time together. So it's amazing. But what if you're not retirement age? What if you're not working because you want to, you're working because you have to. So you're not in retirement. How do you get a second stream of income? And how can you get to a place where that income is not always requiring your time and attention? And so we sit down with clients. Like I said, we look at what do you got to work with, and what are some of the things that you could be doing to generate uh, some type of passive income or second stream of income. And a lot of times this is, it's time to invest in rental property. And so we have clients who are buying additional properties and either putting those out on short-term rental or traditional rental, but being able to generate an additional income from that. A close friend of mine is in a position where I keep hinting at the idea that he too should have a second property, and that second property should be somewhere that he wants to vacation, somewhere that he wants to take the family from time to time. But when it's sitting empty, it could easily be an Airbnb. It's an interesting and fun place to be, but it can also be a little bit intimidating or overwhelming, or just there's a little bit of uncertainty. Like, I've done all these things. I've gotten to a really good, comfortable place, and there can be fear around. But like, what if I make a misstep, and what if I, go from being in a really good financial position to something that's less ideal? You know, Taking out a mortgage on another property for $200 or $300 or $400,000 is kind of scary. But then I know people who have done that, and they're not just a little successful at it. They're wildly successful at it. Imagine having a piece of property that not only is somebody else paying your mortgage for you throughout the course of the year through short-term rentals, but above and beyond that, you make double what your mortgage is a year, or sometimes 3 times as much. That's the type of thing, right? When you're feeling just kind of stuck, you're paying all your bills, you got money saved, you have no debt, but there's just like, what's next? Well, that's what's next. And that's what it looks like to work with a financial coach at New Money Habits. We can take you from any starting point, help you to clarify what are your financial goals, and start to even put timelines around how long will it take you to get caught up on your bills? How long will it take you to save and eliminate debt? How long will it take you to be in a position where you can establish additional streams of income? And so I hope you hear our message today, and that is, no matter where you are, whether you're behind on your bills, you're living paycheck to paycheck, you are drowning in debt, or you just feel stuck, you are not alone. There are others who are like-minded, who are trying to achieve the same things that you are trying to achieve. And you can join them for free by joining the New Money Habits community. You also can become a member for as little as $5 a month, and you'll get access to some of our premier tools like the Payday Power Planner Plus. You can also upgrade to join member-only events, join group coaching. But if you want individual attention, one-on-one coaching, remember that we also offer a free discovery call to identify where it is that you are and what it is that you're trying to achieve.
That does it for this episode of the New Money Habits podcast. Remember, if you have any questions, make sure to hit us up on social at New Money Habits and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Please consider leaving a 5-star rating and review to help us spread this message of hope to people looking for a better plan for their money.